When she opened the heavy wooden door, she found a manuscript that should not exist. It was covered in dust, protected inside a rusted iron box, and its first line read, "If someone reads this, know that we failed to escape." That sentence, written centuries ago by an unknown nun, forever changed the way historians viewed the history of the Ottoman Empire and the Christian convents that survived within its borders. What those women lived through was not a simple forgotten episode. It was a mystery wrapped in fear, silence, and disappearances that still sends chills today. For centuries, the oldest archives mentioned only rumors. Convents that went silent overnight, nuns who sent letters begging for help and then never wrote again, Christian temples surrounded before dawn with no explanation. But no one knew what had truly happened. Villagers repeated stories in whispers, as if speaking too loudly could awaken something that should not return. No one had proof until that manuscript was found. The convent described in it was located on a lonely hill, surrounded by dense forests and roads that became impassable in winter. The sisters lived in monastic calm, devoted to prayer, writing, and teaching the children of the nearby village. But one day they began noticing signs they could not ignore. Strange symbols carved into trees, animals disappearing, unexplained lights flickering between the trees. At first, they thought these were just peasant superstitions. Very soon, they discovered they were wrong. One night, while everyone slept, the convent bell began ringing on its own. The nuns rushed to the cloister with trembling candles and found the bell rope moving even though no one was touching it. The air was perfectly still. The next morning, one of the sisters noticed that the main gate, always secured with a massive iron bar, had been shifted just a few centimeters. Not enough to open, but enough to prove that someone had tried to enter. The following days grew even more unsettling. Some nuns claimed they heard footsteps in the hallways while everyone was gathered together. Others said they saw shadows moving behind windows even though no one was outside. The abbess ordered double night watches, although the convent had no known enemies. Still, tension in that region was constant. Rumors of spies, soldiers, and secret messengers traveled from village to village. The sisters began to feel they were being watched. One especially cold night, the village dogs began barking relentlessly. The nuns gathered in the chapel, and from there they heard something they would never forget. A metallic, repetitive sound coming from the road leading to the convent. Footsteps. Many footsteps. And they did not belong to villagers. The sisters extinguished all candles so as not to reveal their whereabouts, but from the darkness they saw the glow of torches approaching the entrance. The manuscript says that in that moment nobody spoke, nobody screamed. They only prayed silently as the footsteps circled the building. The torches stopped in front of the main door. The nuns heard murmurs in a language they could not fully understand, but the accents were familiar. Men from distant lands, the ones involved in the empire's conflicts. They tried to open the door, pushed, struck it, but the iron bar held. After several attempts, they left without breaking in. The community believed that was the end. It was not. In fact, it was only the beginning. The unknown visitors began returning every few nights, always in silence, always with torches, always looking for a weak point. The nuns began sleeping dressed, with a small bag ready in case they had to run. The sound of footsteps in the underbrush became a daily horror. Some sisters believed those men did not want to force their way in. They wanted to observe, study, wait for the right moment. One afternoon, while the sisters collected water from a nearby well, they found something buried among the stones. A piece of pottery with a symbol none of them had seen before. The abbess ordered it hidden, but that very night it disappeared from its hiding place. Someone from outside had retrieved it. Fear rose to unbearable levels when the youngest sister in the convent claimed she saw a man watching her from the forest. He wore no armor, no uniform, just a dark tunic and a semicircular wooden mask. When she ran to call the others, the man had vanished without leaving footprints. The manuscript recounts that tensions peaked when the sisters discovered one of the outer walls marked with new symbols, freshly carved with a knife. They looked like signs, warnings, or some coded language. The nuns realized then that the men around them were not simple wanderers or soldiers seeking shelter. They were part of an organized group studying the terrain, the building, and the habits of those who lived inside. The situation turned critical when, one dawn, a sharp knock echoed at the back entrance. One sister approached with a candle and found something that made them all recoil. A small sack containing fragments of parchment, pieces of pottery, and a note written in unfamiliar calligraphy. No one could decipher it, but the abbess said it was not a friendly message. That night, the torches returned. But this time, it wasn't a handful. It was dozens. The manuscript describes how the entire hill seemed to burn with moving lights. The sisters gathered in the chapel, but the abbess made a desperate decision: hide the youngest in the underground tunnels built centuries earlier to protect relics. The footsteps grew closer, the voices louder. Then something unexpected happened. Just as the doors were about to give way, a thunderous sound echoed in the distance. Some historians believe it was a military patrol. Others think the attackers received a signal to retreat. Whatever the cause, the torches began to extinguish one by one. The shadows dispersed. Silence returned to the hill. When dawn lit the convent, the sisters discovered something inexplicable. In front of the entrance stood a carved stone pillar placed during the night. It bore the same symbols they had seen on trees and walls. It looked like a warning, or a final message. After that day, the visitors never returned. The sisters sealed their records, hid the manuscript, and swore never to tell what they had lived through. The convent continued for 2 more centuries, but none of its residents ever forgot what happened on that hill. The manuscript was found centuries later, and its content is still being studied. No one knows who those men were, what they sought, or why they stopped just when they were about to break in. Historians still debate whether they were part of a clandestine group within the Ottoman Empire, unofficial scouts, or a sect operating outside any formal structure. What is certain is that, even now, the symbols found on the walls remain undeciphered, and the final line of the manuscript is still the most disturbing one. If they ever return, let this testimony help others be prepared, because what they did was never discovered by anyone else, but we saw it, and it was far worse than you imagine.